that, especially if it's computer animated video like Finding Nemo or Shrek or something like that. Those are computer animated, and they're almost guaranteed to always be 24 frames per second because they originate for computers, and computers are progressive machines. The displays that you look at on your computer is a progressive display, unless it's a CRT, one of those big old television looking displays. Then it could be interlaced. But anyway, so in order to make the picture appear at the same speed, even though you got to display the frames a lot faster, because you're displaying, for every frame you're displaying half of a picture's information in fields. So it takes 2 frames to display one complete picture. So the frame rate is for interlaced content that's for television is 30 frames per second. And again, it's actually a ratio that's close to 30. It's actually 29.976 as a decimal representation, or 30,000 divided by 1001 as a ratio representation. But we're calling it, for simplicity, 30 frames per second. So they've got to speed it up to 30 frames per second in order for it to work on a television, in order for it to display correctly at the proper speed and not be slowed down or sped up. Now, when transcoding video, you need to get rid of that. You really need to get rid of the interlaced content, and there's certain video filters that we'll show you in the next video that can help you to get rid of interlaced content. And the next type of content we're going to talk about, called telecin content. Now, as you see here in this Family Guy show, this was originally interlaced content, which meant that every time you see movement, you will see
trying to save par.
You will see a combing effect.
God, is she hot. Look at that rack.
Now, if you ever watch a DVD on a computer and you see like a combing effect, like lines in the picture, that's because that particular video you're watching is interlaced. It has top fields and bottom fields. It's displaying them one right after another. So anytime there's movement and you're watching it on a progressive display, a display that displays whole picture frames at the same time, like a computer's display does, an LCD display does, well, then you can see the combing effect on an LCD display because it's a progressive type display, and you're displaying interlaced content on it. That's why you always de-interlace stuff. That's not going to hurt when you play it back on a DVD player, because a DVD player can interlace it on the fly before it sends it to the television. Alright, now that covers interlaced content. And interlaced content is 30 frames per second all the way through. There's no mix. There's no mix between interlaced and progressive that I personally have ever seen. If it's interlaced, it's 30 frames per second from beginning to end, and it displays picture information, top field, bottom field, top field, bottom field. 2 whole frames. It takes 2 frames of fields, alternating top and bottom fields, to display 1 full frame of picture information. Remember that. That's interlaced content. Alright, now we're going to move on to telecin content. Now, telecin is actually, the word is actually a mix between television and cinema. It means made for television from cinema. Cinema frame rate is progressive. It's 24 frames per second, whole fields, or whole frames of content, not fields, whole frames of content at 24 frames per second. That's called film. And that's also called progressive, as we've said before. But that's also referred to as film frame rate and film content. Anytime they take a film that they plan on producing on television, sometimes they will apply a process. The film industry applies something called telecin, which means we're making it for television from cinema or film. And telecin is actually an interesting way of making it 30 frames per second, which is required for televisions. Well, it's not really required, but most everything displayed on a television is 30 frames per second, especially in the U.S. And UK and Europe, it's 25 frames per second. Anyway, what they have to do is they have to figure out how to make something that's only 24 frames per second play at 30 frames per second. So they take every fourth frame, every fourth whole picture frame, and they interlace it. That's just, so in other words, check it out. Let me show you with a calculator, I guess. So check it out. You got 24 frames per second, right? Well, now, if you need to display at 30 frames per second, 24 divided by 4 is 6. So if you duplicated every fourth frame, that means you've got 24 frames plus 6 frames, which is 30 frames per second. So every fourth frames, okay, so you got one, we'll look at it like this. You got one frame of complete picture content. You got another frame of complete picture content. You've got another frame of complete picture content. And then the fourth frame is actually top field content only, as you see. And then the fifth frame, which is a duplicated fourth frame, is just the bottom field content of the fourth frame that wasn't displayed in the fourth frame. So it adds an extra frame. Instead of 4 frames, every fourth frame it duplicates, or every fourth frame is interlaced and split into 2 frames. So you've got 3 frames of progressive and 2 frames of interlaced. It splits the fourth into 2 frames and displays top field, bottom field. That's called telecin, and it makes a 24 frames per second film or progressive video into a 30 frames per second video for television format. They do that to keep the same movie's duration when converted to when played on a television, I guess. So anyway, when you transcode video, you've got to de-telecin it, which is remove the telecin process. What that does is when it's transcoding the video, it'll take all the bottom field information, that this field, this field, this field, I'm pointing to the blacks, this field, this field, this field, and this field. It'll take all the bottom field information from the 5th frame, and then it'll look at the 4th frame and take all the top field information, put it together to make a whole picture frame, make that as the 4th frame, and then just drop the 5th frame. That's called the de-telecin process. And that's what you do to de-telecin a DVD that you're transcoding. Now, some DVD players, or some DVDs, don't, okay, that's actually called, to be more specific, the hard telecin process. A hard telecin means it's hard-coded telecin content, meaning the actual pictures are edited to on the every 4th and 5th frame. Excuse me, I get the hiccups. To contain only top and bottom field information. That's hard-coded into the picture image itself. That's called hard telecinning. Now, soft telecin is different. Soft telecin content is actually not telecinned in the same way. It's only got 24 frames per second, but the 4th frame is just shown. It's kind of like it just takes the 4th frame. It's a whole frame, no interlace at all, and just displays it twice. It's kind of like that, but it displays it interlaced. It's actually a whole picture frame, and it's only 24 frames per second. It does not duplicate the 5th frame. There's not a physical 5th frame in the film, in the DVD content. There is no physical 5th frame. And the 4th frame is not chopped into fields. It's not interlaced. The DVD player itself will read an information flag that is in the DVD telling the DVD player that this is soft telecin content, meaning use software to apply the telecin process as you play this video file. That's what soft telecin is. So you can actually apply a telecin, de-telecin, and M-Player or M-Encoder when you're transcoding. If it detects that it is soft telecin content, it knows it doesn't even have to manipulate any of the image information at all. It knows just to ignore the telecin flag and play it and transcode it at the 24 frames per second. Now, I know it's a lot to throw at somebody that's just now learning about video. So what I recommend you do is go to mplayerhq.hu. That's MPLAYER as in queen .hu as in umbrella. Anyway, that's MPlayer's main page. MPlayer also encompasses